Hey everyone, welcome to What's in the Box. Friday the 13th has come and gone, and I had hoped to have a review of the Part 7 Jason that Neca recently released. Sadly, those haven't made it into stores like I'd hoped, or at least not in my area. And so we will settle for a Part 3 Jason Voorhees. Part 3 is one of several favorite Friday movies for me. A lot of people wouldn't point to Part 3 simply because it has a lot of 80s cheese in it. But honestly, I kind of like it because of that. It's also the first time we see Jason in his hockey mask, and Jason used a machete quite a bit. I can't remember if he's used the machete in the past movies. I know in Part 2, Jenny kind of hits him in the shoulder with it, cuts him in the shoulder with a machete, and then he removes it and drops it, I believe, at the start of Part 3. But I can't really remember them using a machete too much more than that. Maybe in Part 1 briefly. Either way, as far as I'm concerned, this is the first time Jason really wields the machete. Although he does wield several other weapons, and this is also the first time he dons the hockey mask. Thank God, because the sack head was kind of goofy. So what we'll do is crack open this box and show you what's inside. Alright, so here we have Neca's Jason Voorhees from Part 3. One of the first things I want to do is approach the figure itself. Now this has the standard Neca articulation. We have some pivots in the ankles, joints in the knees, ball joints here in the hips, wrist articulation, of course, elbow, shoulder, and then of course head. No neck articulation on this particular figure. Overall, the paint looks pretty good. I was kind of curious about the proportions for this particular figure. And one thing, try to adjust this, bend him a little at the knees. One of the problems with the figure is he has no forward motion in his ankles that I can tell, and he tends to lean a little forward, so you've got to give him a bend at the knees, a little bend at the hips to kind of reposition him where he stands pretty well. Anyway, on to proportions. Richard Brooker, who played the Part 3 Jason, was a pretty lanky guy, so it's tough to say where this lands without having other Jason figures to compare him with. But I do feel he's a little short and maybe not as bulky as I would like him to be. Again, he was a pretty big guy, or at least looked pretty big on screen, and a lot of that was in his legs and torso. And then, of course, they built that out around the neck and upper body to portray the Jason character. But until I have him lined up with others, I'm not really sure how he stacks up. Of course, he's not going to be as big as the Freddy vs. Jason figure, but he should be fairly large in general. He looks okay here. He's definitely bulkier than the Part 2 Jason that I reviewed in previous months. And so that's pretty nice. Clothing is fairly accurate. I believe this is his standard green shirt, white shirt, and sort of gray pants. In typical NECA fashion, these all have washes. So they have a base color, and then they have a particular wash over that sort of matches the look. The sculpt is quite good clothing wise. They always do really nice clothing. Back here you can even see where his shirt is unbuttoned at the wrists, which is cool. In this particular Jason, his collar was very wide and very open because of that bulky neck. And they've captured that right here as well. Jason in this film also had a fairly dirty look, and you can see that in his hands, the wash that they did there, and the one on his head. We'll get to the head. Now, one thing you have to be extremely careful about with these Jason figures are the straps to the hockey. These are very fragile, not extremely fragile, but pretty fragile to the point where you can break a strap if you're not careful. Now, I feel this is a removable mask. Another thing you have to worry about on these is paint stick. That will happen with NECA figures. You'll find that in the joints a lot, but in this particular figure, I've just wiggled the mask around a little and moved the strap some, and it comes right off. Now let me turn this to get a nice little look at Jason here. Whoa. First and foremost, this is way too dark. I'm not sure how this is coming out on camera. It seems okayish. In person, it's extremely dark. And it really kind of ruins the skin tone look. I had hoped that this would be a little bit better. Maybe the other head is. I'm not sure. But it really is extremely dark, and there's just way too much wash and weathering on this particular face. Now, as far as the sculpt goes, the sculpt's great. It's pretty accurate. He's got the one sort of lazy eye, the bulky parts of his head sticking out, the one small cauliflower ear there. So the sculpt's great. It's just very heavily washed. Same with his hands, I guess. Going on to the fresh hockey mask. This looks really good, actually. That has a nice almond color to it, which some of the hockeys did have. And it's lightly weathered with a light wash over it. So not too shabby there. Now, of course, we have the battle damaged head here. Now, that hockey is very similar to this one, with the exception of the axe mark there in the forehead. He does end up taking an axe to the head after all. So we will gently try to pry this off. And this is usually where the problems come in with the paint stick. There's just something that happens to these during shipping and while setting on the shelf. Alright, so a quick look at that head. He has a very extreme grimace there. The weathering is still the same, still too dirty, but the blood is done quite well. There's some dark blood where he took the hit to the head, and then lighter blood streaming down one side of his face. I like that pretty well. I'm not sure what I would display him with. Maybe with the axe head. Now moving on to the accessories. What we have here is just a wide variety of what he used in the film. And I will try to briefly go over what was used and what wasn't. Of course, the pitchfork was used at least twice. I believe one of the characters' names, Foxy, or Fox, was ran through and stuck to the side of the barn at one point with the pitchfork. And I believe he uses it again at another point. Yeah, he does. He rams through the torso, the biker that has the cigarette in his mouth. He deserved it. Most of them do, usually. Anyway, moving on to that is, of course, the axe. I can't remember exactly how Jason uses the axe himself. This might have been for I can't remember his name, but the black biker who carried the chains around with him and was like whipping the chains and junk like that. It might have been this, or it might have been the wrench. I don't know. But this is, in fact, the axe that Jason takes to the head when Chris Higgins hits him real good when he's unawares. I have a need to try this in the head just to see. And amazingly, it will stay in his head. Now, hopefully it will stay in his head with the hockey mask on. If it does, I will be pretty elated because I would definitely do that pose. Let's see here. And it stays pretty well. So you could pull off the axe to the head pose, which was, you know, that 3D moment that they have where Jason's arms are outreached, you know, trying to go after Chris Higgins with the axe in his head. So that might be a pose that I do, actually. From there on, we have the spear gun. This was a spear gun that Shelley was carrying around for some god-awful reason. The poor kid decided he was going to go scuba diving with a spear gun in the woods at a small pond. That makes a whole lot of sense. But poor Shelley, what can we say? He didn't deserve to die. He just wanted a little nookie. But anyway, Jason takes the hockey off of Shelley and takes the spear gun as well. I don't know if Shelley had the machete or not. But yes, he uses this to kill Shelley's hopeful girlfriend at the docks, and she takes the spear straight to the eyes. That was a pretty cool kill. Of course, we have your standard knife. I'm sure that was used a couple times. Can't really remember exactly. It has a nice metal patina to it, as well as some blood on it. Pretty cool. Wrench. This may be the wrench that killed the black biker. I cannot remember. Jason's classic machete. Nice silver tone there. And a poker. Now, the one thing I wish they would have done with this is made the very end red hot. That's how he kills the poor girl. Entering the main room of the Higgins place, he pulls his hot poker out and runs her through. That would have been a nice touch if they'd added a little orange there. Now, of course, as I mentioned, part 3 is one of my favorites, mainly due to the machete and the hockey mask. I do feel for poor little Shelley. Like I said, he just wanted a little nookie. And sadly, I don't think he was ever going to get it from the girl who took the spear to the eye. But, you know, I still feel for him. Chris Higgins gets away, but she is scarred for life and absolutely out of her mind, insane. She has essentially killed Jason. He does come back in part 4 after all, but then he truly does die. And in part 5, disappears into nothing but a memory of Tommy Jarvis, and eventually returns. Well, let's say he just lives in part 6. But I think it's overall it's done well. Like I said, proportion-wise or height-wise, I'll have to see with other Jasons. But the accessories are plentiful. My main complaint would be the dirty wash over the heads. He was never this dirty. Yes, he was dirty, but he wasn't that dirty. And it looks like he's just took a roll in the mud. And that's a shame, because the sculpt is really good. Even the grimacing face is really well done. So it's tough to see that happen. I could tell you to go in with some skin tone paint and dry brush over this, but it would never look quite as good as it should when Neca did it themselves. But outside of slight proportions and the paint wash, this is a pretty solid figure. And of course, I love Jason and I love part 3, so we'll catch you next time.